COVID. It's finally official. Joe Biden is the Democratic Party's presidential nominee, the man to take on Donald Trump in November's US presidential election. His coronation took place during this week's Democratic Party National Convention, a mostly virtual affair with plenty of pomp and rhetoric, though without much of the typical pageantry. But the celebrations and speeches about a united front belie a deep divide within the party. Rage over the Democrats' direction, which has been festering for several years, is threatening to boil over. Party members are demanding radical change and looking to oust the old guard. The most powerful Democrat, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, is herself facing the prospect of losing her congressional seat to a progressive challenger in November. So, what does this mean for the future of the Democratic Party? How might this affect this year's race for the White House? Could party infighting strengthen the Democrats or guarantee 4 more years of Trump? It's a political party's political party. Like all parties, you can tell a lot about the host by who they invite, and the Democratic Party's National Convention guest list is telling. Among those who gave pre-taped speeches, Colin Powell, the Secretary of State under Republican President George W. Bush and one of the architects of the Iraq War.
I support Joe Biden for the presidency of the United States.
Susan Molinari, a former Republican congresswoman and lobbyist. Meg Whitman, a billionaire former Republican gubernatorial candidate. And John Kasich, a former Republican presidential hopeful.
I know Joe is a good man, a man of faith, a unifier.
You know, this is a party that gave Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez one of the most exciting and well-liked young leaders in the party 60 seconds to speak, and yet they're finding time all over for the architects of the Iraq War, for John Kasich, who is governor of Ohio, restricted abortion access, clamped down on unions.
The DNC says the Republican speakers show the party is a broad church and that it's interested in winning over middle-of-the-road Republicans, though some see it as a clear example of the Democrats' shift to the right.
They're more welcoming of Republicans than they are of the left.
One of the things that's most interesting about the DNC this year is that the party isn't really trying to produce a coherent message about where it stands at all.
At the same time, there's a major movement on the other side of the political spectrum. Progressive figures promoting radical change are garnering incredible support. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib and Ro Khanna are among those who've won office by promoting progressive policies, like universal health care, increasing the minimum wage, criminal justice reform, addressing climate change, ending overseas wars, issues the Democratic Party leadership has either ignored or presented weaker positions on.
Brothers and sisters, I have no doubt that the political revolution is going to sweep this country.
Democratic socialist Bernie Sanders twice came close to winning the party's presidential nomination.
I think one of the most important electoral milestones, in decades was basically when every Democratic candidate dropped out to deny Bernie Sanders the nomination. This is historically consequential, but it's also very important for what happens to the Democratic Party.
And a progressive Democrat could soon kick out the leader of the party. For the first time in her decades-long career, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is facing a genuine primary challenge.
She is as much a tool of Wall Street as the Republicans that she claims to combat, and behind the veneer, mouthing resistance, I see in too sharp detail a record too long of advancing too many conservative policies.
Recent events have only inflamed public discontent. Millions of Americans are calling for political systems to be overhauled. The nation is in the grip of health and economic crises, which have seen near-record unemployment. 70% of Americans aren't happy with the current direction of the country. A significant chunk of the population believe neither the Republicans or the Democrats are interested in real change.
These folks want to have representation. They want to have systemic change when it comes to issues such as systemic racism, but also classism and the rich and poor gap that's been so prevalent now. They want to reduce that.
Embracing progressive causes could entice more Americans to vote Democrat, including the largest voting bloc of all, those who typically don't vote. But it also opens up the Democrats to attack.
Joe Biden is the puppet of left-wing extremists. We'll end up with one very boring socialist country.
Socialists and far-left radicals have been Trump's go-to smears of the Democrats. His campaign has been trying to draw parallels between progressive policies and violent protests.
I mean, it's always possible they could lose some of the, certainly the moderate, the Republicans who are more pro-business oriented.
Joe Biden is now the Democrats' champion to take on Trump. It's arguably his toughest battle in his more than 40-year political career. The fight for the future of his party will wage well beyond November.